Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Wednesday, September 9th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. What are we up to today? Well, it's Wednesday, so it's campaign discussion day. We're going to talk a little bit about puzzles and players, plus so many P's. There's a new one from CSP Kris of Crooked Staff Terrain. And it looks something like that thing on the left over there, which is kind of nifty if you like that sort of thing. And that's what we're going to discuss first. We're going to discuss whether or not people like puzzles. Some do, some don't. Never the twain shall meet. Is that the truth? Oops. Hit part of my microphone there. Let me just adjust that a little bit. Make it all better. Close enough. Anyway, so there is a bit of a rift, right? Between people that enjoy dealing with puzzles during RPGs and people that don't. We should state that this is primarily a first edition, at the very least an old school show. We focus mainly on old school style gaming, specifically for me, first edition AD&D, so there's got to be that aspect to a lot of RPGing. It's going to rear its ugly head. There is the idea, of course, in more contemporary RPG play that you should be able to just roll the dice to avoid having to solve puzzles or puzzling situations. Your character, after all, might have an 18 intelligence, and maybe you don't. So why shouldn't your character be able to just roll the dice? And you know, it's a fair argument. But in old school play, people brought their own faculties to the table, and they would be handed a player handout, much like the one on the screen here, and be told that it is between them and something else. It's an obstacle, and to get past it, they need to solve it. Is that fair? Well, you know what? Fair is... Is it fair that a bunch of us get to sit around and play games while other people are toiling in a field somewhere, eking out a subsistence level living? No. So, you know, there are relative definitions of fairness in this world, and I think we have to set aside whether it's fair or not as a bone of contention against puzzles, and think about the fact that, as there are some players that vehemently despise any sort of puzzles and games, there are some that thrive. There are some that love it. There are some who will sit at a game table with a handful of other players for hours on end, listening to them brag about their swords and swing them at other monsters in battle. Other monsters? Am I saying they're a monster? No, not really. That just came out that way. And we'll listen to so-and-so, the druid, spend hours picking up various herbs and spell components in the bazaar and chat up all of the herbalists, and we'll sit there quietly and allow all that to happen. And then here comes a puzzle, and everybody's got to say, "Oh, I hate puzzles." But I like puzzles. I'll be the one. Let me have a chance. What are we supposed to do? Sit around while you're doing the... Yeah, you know what? That's not fair. If we want to bring that back in, it's not fair to openly express huge complaints. Now, if something like this goes into the game, you certainly should RPG your character as feeling not up to the challenge. But I have an 18 challenge. Well, maybe puzzles just aren't your thing. Maybe you're really smart when it comes to keeping the books and the finances for the group, but that sort of analytical thinking on an abstract level is just outside of the box that you live in. And it's okay to be a really intelligent character and have a blind spot. So RPG that. Role play that. Right? It's okay to be the fighter that loves muscling up to the front line in combat and pushing everyone else aside so you can get the lion's share of the swings and hits in. And it's okay to do all that and then have to look at a puzzle and think, oh my God, I'm going to die to some words on a wall. Play that up. RP that. Don't start complaining about how you don't like puzzles when there's someone else in the group who might. Now, if at a certain point, everybody in the group, hey, Lexfire, how you doing? Everybody in the group is flummoxed and they may not despise puzzles, but they're just come to a point of an impasse and can't get beyond it. Well, then that's up to the DM to make some sort of accommodation or adjust the flow of the game so that things can move forward without everything bottlenecking at figure out these 4 riddles and put the letters in the thing. And I'm just using this one as an example here. There are so many others. Lexfire22 on the chat says, like the scene in Lord of the Rings, opening the sealed door into the Dwarf City, most of the group were sitting around. You know, it's certainly true that you had 9 different characters there who could have been written to override Gandalf. Tolkien could have said, you know what? Boromir wouldn't, Boromir, it's not in his character to just sit around and do this. Hey, he's going to leave. He doesn't want to, I've got to play his character. He's just not going to stand for this. He's going to pick up, Merry and Pippin, we don't care so much about them. We're going to grab, maybe we'll care about them later. But for now, we're just going to grab Frodo and Sam, throw them over our shoulders and start marching to the south to the pass between the mountains, because this riddle thing, we don't do riddles. Aragorn, Gimli, come on. I know you guys, Aragorn be hemming and hawing a little bit, but Gimli be right there. Well, I wanted to see the mines, but I didn't know there'd be wordplay. I don't think I'm up for this. How about you, Legolas? We friends yet? Can you come with me? So, yeah, I didn't want to go in the dark anyway. Yeah, sure. You got my bow. Well, you got my axe there, Boromir. Okay, so off they go. There you go. We just did a whole NPC scene, which is annoying enough, right? Anywho, this is a fun puzzle. And what I'm saying is let puzzles have a chance at the table. Don't deny them right out of the box. If you're a player who doesn't particularly appreciate puzzles, give them a chance for the other player's sake. And, get into the spirit of it. Role play a little bit of your character. Don't try to force your player beliefs into the game until we know what everybody else is feeling about it. There may be 2, 3, maybe every other player is a bit intrigued seeing these 4 riddles and thinking, oh, well, wait a minute now. I have no wings and yet fly. Well, wait a minute. Is it 5 letters and 4 letters and 5 letters and 4 letters? Or is it 5, 3 and 6 and 3 and 6? Or is it 5 and 6 and 5 and 6? Do they overlap like a crossword? Could be. Well, there you go. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty nifty one. We were in the soup and barely got out of it. And then we came across a panel on a wall, which was seemingly like a wall safe. And this was there, and it was our chance. There was a bag nearby that we recovered that had these tiles in it, and it was obvious they fit into these different slots. If we wanted to open that panel, if we wanted that treasure, now this is one of those situations where a DM could put something vital to the adventure beyond that panel. Or a DM could just put a little more treasure back there. Maybe you don't really need to get through this. Maybe it's okay if you fail. So maybe the DM can play it off like, well, give it your best shot. Can't I just roll for it? My guy's smart. No, you got to solve it yourself. Well, maybe it's not vital. The players can think. If he doesn't need us to get in there, still, what's he got in there? And that'll bring it home, right? That'll keep them interested. That'll make them try to solve it. It's enough that you don't care if they get in there or not to take that pressure off, to let them know that it's not vital to the adventure. If it was, would you? You know, it's the old story about secret doors, right? At the end of the day, there's this mentality about secret doors old school and secret doors new school. In the contemporary new way of thinking, probably 2000 onward, 3.0 onward, right? 3rd edition era onward. Maybe even creeping back into 2nd edition. If you put a secret door in a dungeon somewhere, you wanted it to be found. It led to more of the adventure that you had envisioned happening, even if you didn't railroady-like plan it. Such that if they don't get through that secret door, geez, I spent 5 hours prepping everything beyond that secret door. Well, that's on you. But maybe don't put a secret door there. Maybe make it more obvious. Maybe it's not so secret because someone else knows about it and they know they're looking for a secret door even if they don't see exactly where it is. Look for the secret door in the room. And then it becomes, if you go to the throne room, the ancient throne room that's deserted, you'll find a secret door. Get through that secret door and so on and so forth. And at least they know there's one there and that they need to find it. Then it becomes time as a resource. And time as a resource is a very real and fair thing, because everything's a resource in RPGing, right? Everything you're carrying, time, your hit points, your spells. So it's important to view secret doors as something you can either live without them finding. So maybe in a chamber there's a secret panel with a bit of treasure behind it that if they don't get it, well, that's just tough for them, and you don't really care if they do or not. You hope they do for their sake, but if they don't, the game will play on. On the other hand, if it's integral to the plot that they go through, well, they should probably know that they're looking for one so that the focus becomes on the time resource rather than on whether or not it's going to upset the entire adventure. So, 2 puzzles. If you're going to place a puzzle somewhere, then the solving of it is either vital or it's incidental. If it's incidental, make them play it out. Don't worry about contingencies. Let it be what it is. If it's vital, you've got to devise some ways in advance of how you're going to deal with either frustration or how you're going to deal with just making it too tough of a puzzle. Too tough of a puzzle could be too tough of a puzzle on this day, and maybe a week from now they look at this thing and they're just like, oh yeah, this is obvious, boom, boom, boom. So don't put it out to whether or not your players are smart enough necessarily, but maybe just not clever enough on a given day. I think it's worth noting that gamers in general seem to be fairly quick on the uptake. So you don't have to hold the hands of your players all the time, in all likelihood. You can gradually add in more information, give them the toughness early, and then ease off the pedal a little bit as it becomes apparent that they might need an extra clue. And you can have clues and hints and stuff laying around the room, right? If you check out this puzzle later, you'll know I have no wings but can fly. 5-letter word. You see an A, 2 R's, an O, and a W down there? Well, there you go. So maybe nearby, scrawled on the wall, somebody figured something out. I mean, it's covered over with some dirt, and somebody can just stumble across it. But maybe somebody scrawled not the actual word, but just drew a picture of an arrow. And maybe saying that aloud is enough for somebody who's staring at this to say, that's it, arrow. Arrow's the first one. And maybe once they got the first one, they've got the first letter, right, of the 2 6-letter words, and they're in a little better shape. And maybe they can do a little more with it. You can have more clues laying around. And it could be someone else that discovered something, was trying to work it out, but then got interrupted and was never able to come back and finish figuring out the puzzle. So think of any number of ways that you can introduce clues in-game without having somebody just outright roll. Because old school, first edition in particular for me, you don't want people just rolling their way through puzzles. Otherwise, there's almost no point in putting them out there. If my game's going to be entirely about, hey, here's a new obstacle, just roll a die and we'll see if you get past it. Oh, you rolled a 20? You already rolled a 20. You're past it. We don't have to describe what it was. It was an obstacle. Come on. That's no fun. That's not a game. Role-playing game is about getting into the characters, and although you're relying on your own intelligence for puzzles and you're figuring it out personally rather than as your character necessarily, you can play it as if your character's figuring it out. And it's up to you to do that. It's up to you as a player to role-play and figure out a way. It's possible that the fighter who's got a 8 intelligence can trip on a sack of grain and accidentally wipe his arm against the wall and brush the dirt off that little image of an arrow, right? It doesn't have to be him cleverly looking around for a clue. Oh, and he doesn't have to say, oh, that's it, it's an arrow. He can look at it and say, hey, some idiot's drawing on the wall here, and point it out for someone else to come over and have a look, right? So yeah, play your characters, but understand at the end of the day that puzzles can challenge players, and it doesn't break the game. So let it happen. So let's look a little more closely at this one. I've pontificated long enough on this. I wanted to check out... Oh, where are we at? Are we here? Is this... Yeah, here we go. All right. I'm going to bring this over. And I had a lot more stuff I was going to deal with today. We still have some time, so I just ran on in the mouth for a long time. So here's what this looks like. And you can go get this. I'll have a link in the show notes. You can go get this on Drive-Thru-RPG. You can put it in a 0. Just pay what you want sort of thing. I'd suggest you pop $1 in there. It's a clever little thing. It's nicely designed. It's all laid out. It's easy enough to glue down onto cardboard and clip everything out so you can have a physical. This is the backer. So once you cut all the holes out of here, you put it on top of the other thing. There's also a link to, there'll be a link to the YouTube video for how to construct this, which is easy enough. And then we've got this nifty thing. Here's how it will look once it's all constructed. Assembly instructions can be found on the Crooked Staff Terrain YouTube channel. Crooked Staff Terrain. Christian Richards. He does so much good stuff. He's got a Patreon too. You can find those links on his site, on the YouTube channel, in the links under there. Go check him out. I'm a Patreon supporter of his, so full disclosure. He just does such great work, and he's been doing it for a decade and a half or more. I first ran into him over on EN World back in the early days of 3.5 or maybe the later days of 3.0, and he was already doing dungeon tiles and does such a wonderful job. He's well worth supporting. I did want to take a quick look over at the DMG too while we're at it, though. Traps. The simple definition, by the way, of a puzzle is a game, toy, or problem designed to test ingenuity or knowledge. So, in a lot of ways, the tricks and traps that we know that have physical manifestations in game are really puzzles. They are mental obstacles. They are things you have to figure out how to get around. That includes the broken rope bridge. It includes the magically locked door. Even if it's not just say friend and enter. It includes a callback, Lexfire. What do you think? And it includes saying the right the deity's name before touching the altar, like we've got down here, to avoid taking damage. But there's a whole appendix. Appendix G has traps, and those are worth filtering into these tricks, these puzzles, as consequences. 216. Appendix H is tricks. It gives you a bunch of features: altar, pillar, pool, room, force field, and then it gives you a bunch of attributes: ages, poison, rising, sinking. How do you handle magic traps and glyphs for thieves to disable in your games? Well, depends on how high level the thief is, because thieves have to be a certain level to be able to remove magical traps. It's not just something they can do at first level. Certainly there are other ways. I mean, we always hear about the old grognard at the convention who doesn't see any live chickens on his character sheet or piglets. Decides he wants to get a couple of each just in case he sees a hallway with glyphs on the floor. He can send the chicken or the piglet down the hallway. Now, of course, those make noise and they attract monsters of all sorts of things. But, there are other ways around those sort of things. I generally don't have those sorts of things in places where there aren't other ways of getting rid of them. I wouldn't generally have those things in a place where first level adventurers are going to be going if the consequences to them are bad. Are I mean, there are ones in here that just flat out say, poison, save versus death if you don't do this or that properly. And that's all deadly first edition stuff, right? I'm not as heartless as all that. But it's okay for somebody to find a tomb to discover a secret door with stairs down beyond the sarcophagus that's magically locked and they can't open. And it's okay for that to sit there for 10 or 12 more adventures until they're higher level and capable of doing stuff. And don't forget, if a thief attempts a lock and doesn't manage to do it, he can't attempt it again with any hope of success at the same level. If they go up a level, they can make another attempt at the lock as if they learned something new. And this is just locks in general. So magical locks, so too goes that. So keep that sort of thing in mind. And locks are, after all, a puzzle of sorts. Fairly straightforward, but there you go. So we've got all of these tricks in here and examples of them. And you know what? If your group doesn't have a first edition DMG and you're new to DMing, take some of these things, maybe water them down, because a lot of these are death dealing. So they may be a little too brutal for a first edition group. Or maybe you want to get those early character deaths out of the way so that they become something to be expected. But if you're playing with a bunch of players who are used to certain kind of games, and if killing off their characters in the first adventure is going to cause people to flip the table and walk out in disgust and never play again, maybe you don't want the consequences to be quite that brutal. Maybe you want to let them know, this could have killed you, but take them to death's door and let them curl up on the welcome mat for a little while and bring them back so that they're aware that death is definitely a potential consequence. Just got lucky this time and it didn't quite happen. And try not to, as a DM, and this is GMing tips, I know that's tomorrow, try not to make it seem like it's some form of largesse, that you're doing them a big favor by not killing their character, because it's not what it's about. It's about making sure they have fun and knowing your players well enough to know that in some cases, all or nothing is a little too much for that player on this given day. So be careful. Be careful with the power you wield, DMs, because it's not really power, it's a false thing that's invested in you from the players. They're giving you that authority. They can take it away too, so just understand you're playing a role too as a DM, like you're playing a lot of them. Enjoy it, have fun with it, but, don't ruin anyone's day over it. Anywho, we're about there on the clock on the wall, so I'm going to flip back over to here and say the rest of this week, GMing tips tomorrow, building adventures on Friday, GM reviews, Saturday rules retrospective on Sunday, weekly news and announcements on Monday, cartography and world building, Tuesday, then back around to campaign discussion the next day. Thank you if you're following the channel. If you're not, please do. Make sure you also chime in on the chat stream to get in on the giveaways every week. If you're on YouTube, then please do subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. And also give us a comment if you have some constructive criticism, because it's always helpful to make the show a little better. I appreciate everybody who's checking out the show. We'll be back again 9:30 a.m. tomorrow and every day. So come join us on the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.